Okay, thank you so much, Glenn and Jean and Dwayne and Mike and Dick. Thank you so much. Now, the great news is that we actually finished just a few minutes early, and so we're going to turn the rest of the time over to you to ask our guests any questions that you might have. And we have them here in the front row. We have a microphone with them, and Ian's in the back with a microphone that we'll be happy to pass around in the theater. And I'll be here just sort of moderating. So if you guys would be happy to ask, if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask them at this time. Yeah, he's coming.
This is for Jean. I know that with the elderly population that urinary tract infections are just a huge problem, especially when people are coming from nursing homes or perhaps even assisted living. And then also this whole issue of MRSA. And how on earth are we going to get a handle on this without poisoning people with antibiotics? I mean, I know it's a measure from the feds as well.
I think the key words really are best practice and evidence-based protocols. This really is the response that we're looking for in healthcare reform, that as healthcare providers, we look at continued best practice through the clinical continuum, through from hospitals to nursing homes to physician offices to home health. So that would be what I would offer to you.
Okay, any other questions?
This is for Glenn, for your strategies against your local cavemen. Have you found any helpful community enablers or collaborative partners in your efforts to address from a community-wide or whatever the cavemen that are out there?
Internally, it's a lot of you get a lot of that through the succession planning, the talent management. We have a very robust talent management process, and we show that if you want to be in this position, this position, this position, what are some of the attributes and skills you need to move on, and some of it is exactly that type of thing is change management, and so when we do the performance management process, that's one of the things we look at is this person a change agent, or are they just kind of part of the problems all the time? But when it comes out to externally, and to do that, we use a lot of, it's really program management. We use a lot of the universities. We send a lot of people to different classes, whether it's in-house or using people at the University of Wisconsin down in Madison, or at we have UW Manitowoc, which is the parallel to here in Marathon County. So we try to get as much as we can internally, because I think that's where it has to happen. Externally, we try to communicate some of our strategies and some of the things we do as often as possible, whether it's at investor conferences, whether it's in the communities that we work, being very visible in the community, letting people know what's happening. For instance, we did consolidate 3 facilities into 2 in France, and that's extremely difficult. It's very costly too. But the way we managed that change and had everybody on board, you got the community leaders behind it first, and then you go out, but sometimes obviously that doesn't help just because of leaks in the media and that kind of thing. But if you can get everybody, as Dwayne showed, if you get management, you can get some of the top leaders to support it first. Everybody's going to be against it, but if you show them that what the impacts are, that they can be minimal or they're for the best in the long term, that's how you have to get all those people on board. But you got to get those few first before you try to do it alone.
Ian in the back.
One back there.
Thank you. This question could be answered by any of the presenters from this morning. The back 2 rows are comprised of folks from the educational realm, my colleagues at North Central, and K-12 is here, and then ourselves in the back row from Mid-State Technical College. So if there's one thing that, if you could respond to the question, what is the one thing that we can do, that we can infuse into our curriculum that might position our students better for the global economy here in central Wisconsin? About 75% of our graduates, Mid-States and North Centrals, stay in the region. So we need to really do a good job of infusing a mindset that can help them compete better globally.
Okay, who would like to take that question? Okay.
Well, I'll certainly start, but I think both Glenn and Dwayne and my presentation focused on it, the ability to be flexible and to operate in a world that is constantly changing. I mean, both Dwayne and Glenn talked about change management and what you have to go through. You have to be willing to accept a different vision, to lock and load on a vision once you have it, but you have to be flexible enough to be willing to change, and then you have to manage the change process. And I'm not sure how you instill that in a curriculum. It's really got to be more of a mindset. You have to be willing. You have to be open. It's not really something that can be taught, I don't believe. I think it's just something that you learn to participate in. But I think that flexibility, to me, with an expanding global reach of companies with a shrinking world, I think that that's what really the one thing that we have to make sure that our graduates and our future leaders have.
Would anyone else like to take a stab at that? Mike? Yeah. Mike, yeah, we do because we're recording, so if you wouldn't mind, thank you.
It's okay. I don't think this is going to be that profound, but I did run a business school before I got into my current job at UW-Madison, and also taught at the Tuck School of Business. I think sometimes people maybe get too focused on taking people deep into details. The way to prepare for the modern economy, I think, is really people need to be able to, you have to have your communication skills honed well. I couldn't emphasize enough just, learning languages, but learning how to communicate really well in your main language too is very important. And having good basic quantitative skills and reasoning, but then being able to work in a team. And I think having more team-based projects is probably very important in a curriculum. I think we've always underestimated the importance of that in academics because we hold people accountable for what they know and we test them individually a lot. And I think for up to a certain point, that's really important in math and English. You don't want people free riding on others, but getting people to work on projects and solve things as a team and a group is really an undervalued asset, I think, in the modern economy. And especially when times get tough, I see this a lot now. I was thinking about this morning. When things aren't going well on a sports team, you often notice everybody starts pointing fingers about whose fault it is. And I feel like right now things haven't been going quite so well in our country lately, maybe in our region, in our state. And, that's when you really test people. And can they still work as a team, or do they have to find fault and identify where the blame should reside? And, Glenn mentioned it earlier. I think one of the strengths of this area has been a fairly high degree of social cohesion, actually, relative to many other areas of the country. And boy, you don't want to lose that, because when you lose that and you start the finger pointing, good luck solving your problems then, So I think teamwork and the way we can infuse that into curricula is pretty important.
Glenn, did you also want to respond? No, okay. I'm just sad no one said take more political science classes. That was just a joke. Okay, other questions?
I've got a question for Glenn. One of your slides referenced New North, and I'd like you to, if you could, share with us what the New North Coalition has done and how you work with them and how they might have helped you in your business.
We've been a part of that in helping them get started and that kind of thing. And they have different, I would say, education opportunities for some of the employees, obviously in the Manitowoc area. But I would say one of the things where our involvement has been is to do more collaboratively with the other EDCs around the state, whether it's in Milwaukee, because Milwaukee has the big water initiative, New North wants to do in the wind I know we have the Central Wisconsin. There's one. I mean, there's 8 around the state, I think, if I'm right. I don't know if there's 7 or 8, but I think. And so if I had a criticism of the New North, it would be that. But they have helped bring attention to the area as we recruit people, or we put in advertisements into what they do, which then goes outside of the United States as they're attracting businesses. We can be part of that, and it helps us basically from a recruiting standpoint. Where I said it is difficult to get people, whether it's engineers, marketing people, welders, machinists, anything else we're trying to get from outside the area. It does help as a recruiting package.
We have a question down here, Ian.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation. I'm Barb Fleisner with Centergy. We're one of the regional economic development corporations in the state. And now there's actually 9. Some counties fought regionalism for a while, but now all 72 counties in Wisconsin have aligned themselves to a region. So a lot of our work is spent in that coalescing of making sure people understand that they don't have to give up anything to become part of a region, but there are certainly obstacles to work through that. Maybe a comment, and then we may be calling you for further advice as we move forward. We are working with the new Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, the newcomers, in taking a look at the international development that's occurring in the Centergy region, which is 5 counties now. And we're still relatively small, a small level of activity compared to the New North or M7 comparatively. But the last report that I reviewed, we have about 35 companies within central Wisconsin that are actively exporting. So what we want to better understand from them is what are their barriers to getting in the game? How did they get in the game? And how can we help other companies in that? And we know our companies are bombarded daily with a lot of questions. So any advice you could give as someone, if I were to approach you, what would you say? You know, be respectful of my time. This is what I can tell you. This is kind of what's out of bounds as we continue to better understand our international markets here in central Wisconsin.
Who would like to respond? Thank you.
Well, obviously, if you have a request, I mean, we'll do what we can to help you out. It doesn't necessarily need to be my time, but we have plenty of people that can help you out with that. But I would say, first of all, the benefits and the risks. You know, somebody, if you said, hey, I want to have somebody that wants to do it, I'm going to ask them what their benefits and their risks are. Do they understand what the risks are? Can they afford some of the risks? I would spend more time on that because everybody knows what the benefit is. But just know what the downside is, and then how do they want to go about it? Do they have a partner? You know, the due diligence on some of the partners you have overseas can be very, very important. There's a lot of people that come to the United States look to taking their products out. What kind is it technology that you don't want someone else to have? I mean, there are a lot of things. It could be on our food service side. We could have you talk to engineers, or we could have you talk to our legal person. It depends on what questions they would have. I'd point you in the right direction, but I certainly wouldn't have to answer every one of your questions. But our corporate office being in Manitowoc is a big help to that.
As long as Dick is still here, this is for Dick Johnson. Michigan as a state advertises or brags about their electronic and digital infrastructure, and they brag about the number of call centers they have and how they're interconnected and their wireless capabilities and so on and so forth. That's always in their advertising. I know that you can bring in experts and you can hire the best at East Bay and Foot Locker, but how would you, in terms of a grade A through F, how would you rate central Wisconsin's digital infrastructure?
Yeah, not being an academician, I'm not going to really give them a letter grade. It can improve. Let's just say that. I think there's been some investment made. I think that it's getting better. You know, I think there still are challenges. And again, I talked about where we're located and why we're located here. We've never allowed that to stop us, certainly. We continue to lobby for improvements and want to see improvements in both the digital and the wired infrastructure, quite honestly, because we still use some of that. But our data center, for example, our key data center for our internet business is located in Minneapolis and then a backup in Madison. So, I mean, we have a pretty broad-based sort of network. But I would say that there is some work to be done in the infrastructure in central Wisconsin.
We have just a few more minutes. Any last questions? Okay, seeing none, we're pleasantly pleased to be able to release everyone 5 minutes early. Now, before we go, I just want to mention that there is a lunch planned at the 2510 restaurant for those who have pre-registered and prepaid. If you have not pre-registered and paid, you are still welcome. There is some room. You'll just need to see Connie at the registration table. Also, for those of you who aren't sure where the restaurant is, there are directions on a small green slip of paper also at the registration table. We want to give everyone a round of applause again. But before we do, one thing I want to mention really quickly that I neglected to do at the beginning. We heard most of our discussants today talk about the value of collaboration, and this project itself was a collaborative project between WIPS, the Chamber, and Centergy, as well as the campus. But also, it wouldn't have been possible without the underwriting support of a grant from the Judd S. Alexander Foundation. I just want to note that Gary Friels, the executive director, told me that the funding that he was providing, or the board was providing, was on condition of not only collaborating on this project, but continuing collaboration on the project. And so I just want to emphasize that we're grateful for that and grateful for the collaboration. And thank you to all of our guests. We certainly appreciate you being here.